Hey, it's Mads and welcome back to my channel. Hi, how are you? I am so happy to see you. You guys, I am not only happy about fall, I am so happy about Halloween. I feel this is amazing. I finally live somewhere, well, we moved back to somewhere with seasons and it is fall outside. Oh, sorry, baby. Sorry, I'm always crying. It is fall outside and the leaves are changing and the Halloween decorations are up from last week. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. And all I want to do is cozy up with my cauldron mug and my cup of tea and like make some crafts. So I have gone ahead and pre-made some cold porcelain air dry clay. We've already gone over how I make this on my channel. So if you haven't already and you want to know, go watch that video. It's super fast and super quick, and it tells you how to make this exact recipe of the clay I'm going to be using today. And I have some just fun crafts for us to do. So grab yourself a cup of tea and cozy up. If you want to do some crafts with me, please feel free. I just want to do some Halloween craft. Before we jump in, I just want to say very fast and very quick, this is me officially bullying you to subscribe to this channel. I put new videos out every Sunday and we DIY everything from my hair to my grandma's house. So please, if you're interested in following along, please subscribe, like this video, leave a comment. It really does help. And I want nothing more than to grow this channel and be here more for you guys. And more to that point, I am starting to be more present on other social medias, so you can find me over on Instagram and over on TikTok as well. And I post more behind the scenes and content like that, also behind the scenes of my projects and my life here in my grandma's house. So I will see you guys over there. Please come and say hi. Let's jump into the crafting. I've already gone ahead and gathered a bunch of supplies here for us to work with. The main one being the clay recipe in that video, like I was saying in the intro, and a couple of other like special items that you might not think of is a little bowl of whatever oil you used in the clay for your fingers to help smooth things out. You can use water, but I find that the oil works way better and it's a lot slicker. I also have some paper towels and a couple of tools from my kitchen, mainly a rolling pin, a dull knife, more of a spatula knife, and a metal straw. You could totally use a plastic one, but this is gonna help us poke holes in things, and this will help us with smoothing and cutting and all that jazz. You don't need anything sharp because the clay is really smooth. I've also got my acrylic paints out of all colors, and then just some cheapy brushes for painting and things like that. The ends of these brushes are also really great. I've got a couple of sponges just in case. They'll also help with smoothing the clay. And I have some twine because we're gonna make some pumpkin. But that's everything I've pulled out to make everything we're gonna make today that I'm gonna have on hand that I think would be useful to you, but you could really use anything you have lying around the house. Jumping right into our clay projects, I'm taking a good chunk of this clay and using a rolling pin to spread it out and get it nice and even so that I can make a slab of sorts, kind of like you would when you were baking. And I'm doing my best here to make sure that it's even and there isn't any thin spots or thick spots. Words can ever say. And once I have it to the thickness that I'm looking for, which I would say 5 to 10 millimeters thick, you don't want it to be too thin or too thick because then it won't dry right and it will crack. So you're kind of looking for this in between thickness. And once I feel like it's at the right thickness, I'm gonna use this teacup as a template to cut a more irregular circle shape. I want it to be circular, but it also doesn't need to be perfect. And this will become our ghost. My grandma has these glass knickknacks that I found on the shelf that are going to be perfect to drape this over, but you could use anything to do this, even a small jar with a tinfoil ball on top. Just you want something with a rounded top that you can drape the clay over. Using your mold, lightly tug and drape the clay until you like the shape and it looks like a cute little ghost, and however many folds or cracks you want it to have, make sure you leave it in there. Make sure to manipulate the clay until you like the way it looks. If you do get any of these cracks like I did, or seams if I didn't quite mix it well enough, you can easily get these out using a little bit of oil on your fingers, or even oil with a flat tool or anything that will smooth that edge out. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of pressure here. You do need it to make sure the clay incorporates well, and if the clay is sticky, just add more oil. Once you're happy and there is no cracks or lumps or anything you don't want in there, it's time to cut the eyes out. I'm using the end of a metal straw here to punch straight through the clay, but you could use the end of a paintbrush or even your finger if you wanted to make this hole. I'm making mine a little bit wider and having a little of an elongated oval-y shape just because I think that's going to look cuter on the ghost. And leaving this clay on the mold to dry is going to help it hold its shape. Moving on to the pumpkin tea light holder. I'm taking a good sized ball of clay and pressing the tea light directly into it. This way I can easily tell if I need more clay or if I need to take away some clay, and I have enough to make the divot, and it's going to create the hole for the tea light all at the same time. Don't be afraid to add or take away clay at this point, because this is the easiest time to do that if you have that adjustment to make. I find a good rule of thumb working with this clay recipe is that it will shrink about 10% when fully dry. So when you do make any divots or anything, like you're going to put a candle in the clay like I am here with this tea light, you want to make sure you stretch that hole a little bit bigger than you think it needs to be, so that when it shrinks, the candle still fits inside. Now that I have the right amount of clay for my pumpkin and my tea light fits in there nicely, I want to make the pumpkin lines. And to do this, I'm going to cut a piece of twine, place it under the lump of clay, and pull it as if I were going to tie the two ends together. And this will force the twine to push into the clay and make lines on opposite sides mirroring each other like a pumpkin would. You can totally go back and refine these lines later. I'm using the end of one of my paintbrushes here just to widen them a bit. They were a bit too skinny for my liking and I wanted them to have more definition. I also used them to make sure that the lines went all the way to the center on the inside, just for a more consistent, realistic look. And once the pumpkin is in a good place and I can let this dry as is, I can set it aside and move on to making a jewelry tray. I didn't have a 100% solid idea on what I wanted this to look like when I started, so I just played around with a bunch of different things, adding texture and lines and adding clay in places, until I found a shape that I liked and a style that I thought looked really nice. It ended up being this flat tray with almost a moat as the border, just to add some texture in there. And once I was happy with it, I let all three pieces dry overnight until they were solid. They didn't have any give to them, and when you tapped them, they felt really dry. I'm starting with the pumpkin because it has the most layers of paint involved and is going to have the longest drying time. I'm using a very similar method to miniature painting, starting with the shadows and starting with the darkest parts of the pumpkin. I'm going in with some watered down black paint and putting that watered down paint into all the cracks and crevices to add definition and depth to the pumpkin, and making sure it gets in all the cracks and crevices to make sure they're nice and defined. Then, working in layers, almost dry brushing, I'm adding layers of orange and red to build up the color until it gets to this like really nice orangey tone that I can then add a really light layer of lemon yellow highlights to really make it pop. For both the tray and the ghost, I mixed Mod Podge with white paint and added 2 layers to seal them up. And that is how I'm going to leave the ghost. I want to leave it nice and white, and this will also prevent it from yellowing in the future. After sleeping on and thinking about the tray, I decided I wanted to do a cute little hand-painted spider web. I find it really helps if you pull up a reference photo if you're going to be hand painting, especially if it's not something you do often, just to give you a little bit of guidance and an idea of where to start. I just pulled up this spider web on Google and I'm using that as my guide. And starting with a lighter mid-tone gray color and a thin brush, I'm just going to start adding my lines, starting with the straight lines and then working into those like backwards C shapes and adding in little details with black and white as I go on until I get this really pretty spider web that I'm very happy with. And the final step is to add Mod Podge to all 3 of my projects. The ghost already has a good layer with the white paint, so I'm not going to add any more here, but I am going to seal up the paint on both the pumpkin and the spiderweb tray. The Mod Podge adds not only a protective layer, but makes it nice and glossy and shiny, and I find that any of these projects just look better when they have a little bit of gloss and sheen to them. And I'm using the dishwasher safe version of Mod Podge, but you could use any clear Mod Podge you like for this section. But if you've got a different kind, that's totally fine as long as it's translucent. All right, you guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me this week. Getting ready for Halloween. It's so cozy and so fun, and I enjoy doing it so much. So thank you for hanging out with me. If you liked this video, please give it a like. If you liked me, please consider subscribing. I post new videos every Sunday. You guys know this, but if you don't, this is me bullying you into subscribing. You bullying you. Okay. Thank you guys so much, and if you are interested in more of my life, please check out my vlog channel. I post there every Wednesday, and here new DIY projects every Sunday. I will see you guys next week. Bye.